Now I have something very big to show you, and it's just down here. It's a new laser. And in today's video, I'm going to be building a new enclosure, or at least upgrading my existing enclosure to suit this. And I'll talk a little bit about why I decided to upgrade my existing laser. So, no mucking around, let's get straight into it. Now I know what you've all been thinking, Anthony, laser videos are boring. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. Now I've done plenty of laser videos in the past talking about why I think they're such a great addition to any workshop, from templating to shop organization, prototyping and customization. Lasers are incredibly useful tools. But let's be honest, it's all been done to death. And that's the reason why I turn down almost every offer to review or demonstrate lasers that I receive. It's simply not new territory for me, and probably not for you, and doesn't really interest me to redo videos on exactly the same thing. So it's been a lot of no's. However, that's until now. So you might be wondering why say yes now? Well, if you know anything about me, you'll know that I'm always open to learning new things, whether or not that be 3D printing or lasers, whether or not it be CNCs or other woodworking technologies. I like to keep an open mind and explore new possibilities whenever I can. So when Monport reached out to me and asked if I'd like to try out their largest desktop laser that they make, I was ready to reply with the polite no thanks. That was until I noticed what kind of laser it actually was. So what I have here is the Monport Reno Pro 65 watt CO2 desktop laser. And that distinction is very important because up until this point in time, I've only ever used or owned diode lasers. And I know them pretty well, but when it comes to CO2 lasers on the other hand, I know absolutely nothing about them. And that alone has sparked my curiosity. So this video, or this series of videos, is not going to be about me reviewing this particular unit. Reviews imply previous knowledge and understanding and intimate knowledge of the technologies involved, and when it comes to this type of laser, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. Instead, this is going to be about what I learn when I jump from the world of diode lasers that I have an intimate knowledge on to the world of CO2 lasers, which I, as mentioned, have no information or previous knowledge on. So if you're someone like me, for example, that has a diode laser and has used those and is curious about making the leap to a CO2 type laser, then these will be the videos for you. I'll take you along on my journey as I explore the challenges, the differences, and what it kind of takes to use one of these types of lasers for the first time. So thank you to Monport who did supply this unit to me, as well as giving me the freedom to kind of make a video in any way that I want. So they've put no stipulations on it, which is always good when a vendor allows a creator to do that. So in this particular instance, we need to crack on with making an enclosure for this. So let's get started. So our starting point for this upgrade is going to be the existing laser cart that I built a few years ago. This has definitely served me very well through several lasers now, but it's going to have to be modified to fit the new, much bigger Monport laser. So the plan for the upgrade is pretty simple. First, I'll remove the existing enclosure top and replace it with a longer piece that cantilevers out. I have an old desk that I've had in the garage for a few years now set aside for this exact purpose. The main frame I'm going to leave as is. I don't want to have to redo the fold-out table, and it's already the perfect size, and plus I only need to extend out about 8 or 10 inches. Even still, to at least keep up with the aesthetics, I'm going to add some bracing. And then finally, I'll build an enclosure to cover the whole laser, using the same techniques as before with the windows and piano hinges, and this design worked really well for the old laser, so I see no reason it won't be for this one. So you might be wondering, why am I enclosing a laser that's already enclosed? And the reason is simple. Like any wood shop, it gets pretty dusty in here. Now my dust collection system works great, but nothing's perfect, and I want to keep this new laser as clean and protected as possible. And honestly, it's not just about dust, it's also about protecting the laser from myself. The current enclosure, the one I'm disassembling now, I managed to break the windows on it twice. One time thanks to some manhandling of some timber, and another time, well, I'm just going to call it operator clumsiness. So a little extra protection from myself and from the shop is probably a good idea. And plus I think it looks really cool. The old setup has two drawers, one on each side, but with the new top I'm going to make, it's going to cover one end. So I'm going to convert these two drawers into a single one. And instead of making a new drawer, I'm just going to screw these two together and replace the drawer slide with a longer one. It's going to mean that the new drawer has a chunky divider, but it's going to be a waste to remake all of this. There's still going to be plenty of storage, so I'm okay with doing it this way. So the next part is to extend out the side of the cart with a few supports. These are probably not needed, but they will make it aesthetically pleasing, or at least to me. Plus I finally get to use up a few of these pine shorts that I've been hoarding in the workshop. So I had a bit of a deadline to hit on this part of the project, so I reached out and enrolled the help of a very dear friend.
Went with a flathead bit and then countersunk it.
That's the voice of my friend Vipun from Envisage Design, giving me some helpful feedback regarding my choice of countersinking a flathead bit. It's always important to have supportive friends in your life. Alright, twist it a bit. That'll go beneath the surface, it's fine. So in the spirit of friendship, I'm not going to reveal that Vipun has a phobia about spreading glue with his finger. Oh god.
This is one thing that I don't like.
I can tell.
I won't come in your videos, man. Don't stress.
Well, too late for that. There's absolutely nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with applying glue with your finger. In fact, it's fine. If it's good enough for primary school, it's good enough for woodworking.
Now they use PVA glue.
This is basically PVA glue. All jokes aside, I do have to thank Vipun for his help on this project.
Yeah, you can.
I had a pretty tight deadline to try and get this done, and without his help, I don't think I would have got there. I've mentioned Vipun before on my channel. He's a very talented woodworker, maker, and has got into YouTube recently. Please consider subscribing to his channel and following another Aussie maker. Right, so cracking on, it's time for the enclosure, and for that we're going to need some form ply strips. Assembly is just going to be butt joints and some pocket screws for the door frames, so not really a lot to explain here other than to cue the time lapse. Unfortunately, Vipun and his lovely wife Ashani had to leave the next day, but we had a longish weekend here in Victoria due to some sort of horse race that meant I could crack on, albeit without the wisdom of my friend. Next on the list is a door stand to prop it open when I'm accessing the laser. Rather than deal with all the complex angles here, I just modeled it up in CAD and 3D printed it. It's probably not the most aesthetic solution, but it's easy to implement and it does the job. The previous door windows were clear PVC, which were a necessity because the original laser wasn't enclosed, so I needed to be able to see what was going on. This isn't the case for this one. The windows are more about weight than they are about needing to see inside. While in our local big box, Vipun and I stumbled upon these polycarbonate sheets that are super lightweight and are still partially see-through, and should do a great job instead of using the PVC, which is a bit heavier. To mount these into the door frames, I whipped up these 3D printed brackets that slot over the form ply and capture the 8mm poly sheets. If my math is correct, this should all slot in place. It did take some persuasion, but in the end this all worked out well. And another example of where I'm finding more uses for the 3D printer here in the workshop. And yes, this did mean taking the door apart. It's one of the reasons I used pocket holes on this, as I suspected that I might need to do this for the window. I then repeated this for the main door. Now I wish I could tell you this was simple, but this frustrated the hell out of me. Not because of the idea or the design was bad, but when it comes to order of operations, I did this all backwards. I could have saved myself a lot of hassle and trouble doing this before assembling the door. It eventually all went together with some gentle persuasion. Then reinstalled everything back again and checked that I had plenty of clearance for the door to open. The final finishing touches for the enclosure are purely aesthetic, but add a certain pro look. I 3D printed a few covers and grommet type fittings to hide my frankly horrendous jigsaw work. So for now, that basically wraps up the enclosure build. I'm really happy with the way this has turned out. It's pretty much exactly what I imagined when I started sketching this up a few months ago. Now there is still a few small things I need to sort out. I need to mount a dedicated power bracket here somewhere. I've already modeled and 3D printed one out, but I'm not 100% certain where I want to put it just at this exact second. So that's something I think I'll work out once I've played a little bit around with the setup. But for now, let's turn our attention back to the laser itself. Now, early on in the video, I mentioned my lack of experience with CO2 lasers. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, and that's true. But what I do have is a lot of experience with diode lasers. And I think that's important to point out because as far as my experience goes, lasers of this type and size aren't exactly what I would call an out-of-the-box experience. So when I first set up the Reno Pro, it was a fairly straightforward setup, but I ran into problems with the Y-axis just not working at all. Given my experience with other types of lasers, and at the end of the day, the technologies in terms of how the gantries move in these type of machines are pretty much similar, I had a pretty good idea of what I thought the problem was. So instead of going through my direct contact at Monport, I decided to pursue the normal path that any other user would, and that is to contact their general support. And to my very pleasant surprise, they responded within the hour and asked me a bunch of relatively basic questions about the machine, obviously any specific settings, and started to troubleshoot the issue. I fired off a second email with some more details, and again, within probably about 15 minutes, I received a reply back. It had a link to a video that showed me how to remove the side of the laser and to check a few key points that are probably the cause of the problem. So in my mind, I thought that there was probably a loose connection inside here. There's obviously a lot of electronics in here, and it's, I guess, not uncommon that maybe something comes loose during shipping. And that's exactly what happened. So I just tightened everything back up. I made sure that everything looked correct. The Monport people gave me pictures, diagrams, the video obviously as well, showing exactly where to just double check. And probably within 10 minutes of doing that, the Y-axis fired up and everything was back to normal. So kudos to Monport. Their customer support or after sales support was fantastic. They reached out to me almost instantaneously. They gave me some very detailed guides. They even offered to add me on social media so that we could do video chats if the problem progressed beyond that. Luckily, it didn't require that, but Bill, if you're watching, thank you very much for your support and help on that. Yeah, it was a really good experience from a support perspective. So what this really highlights, I think, is that while these machines are becoming more mainstream and obviously more focused towards consumer-orientated people, there's still a little bit to go. I still think you need to be a little bit handy. You have to be prepared to obviously be able to open the unit itself or service these type of units yourself because there's a lot of serviceable parts in here. And obviously it's not an easy thing to be sending that somewhere to do. So beyond that hiccup, the rest of the setup went pretty much straightforward. It's basically plug it into power, plug in the water pump, and I will talk about the water pump in a second, and connect it to your laptop or your computer. Beyond that, there's not a lot of connectivity or setup that's required, but troubleshooting, I think you do need a little bit of background knowledge. So let's now talk about the first real big difference between going from a diode laser to a CO2 laser like the Monport here. Your typical diode laser doesn't need much more than a simple fan to keep things cool, but when it comes to CO2 lasers, it's a completely different story. The first big lesson I've learned here with CO2 lasers is that we need to take cooling very seriously. At the heart of a CO2 laser is of course the CO2 tube. That's where the beam is generated. It works by exciting a gas mixture inside the glass tube using electricity. Now this process isn't exactly energy efficient. Only about 10 or 20% of the electrical energy becomes laser light. The rest of it, around 80 to 90%, actually just turns into heat that's trapped inside the glass. And it's for this reason that all CO2 lasers actually are water cooled. And basically what that means in practice is that you need an external reservoir of water that can be pumped through the laser to ensure that the CO2 tube doesn't overheat. Now Monport does supply a basic water pump with the units. It's a basic water pump, something very similar to what you'd find in a garden pond or a fish tank or something like that. but you'll still need to supply or make your own reservoir. Something that can house the pump securely, keep the water clean, and keep out any dust or contamination. Another really important thing to note that I've discovered is that you just can't use any normal sort of water. You need to use either distilled or demineralized water, and that's to stop any buildup of nasty minerals in the laser unit itself. And this is the part where the setup does become a little bit more complex, because it actually does require you to think about your setup and how you want to implement a cooling solution. Now, there are basically two options in the end. The first one we've kind of already covered, which is, build your own enclosure or build your own reservoir, use the included pump and build your own container that will work with the laser. The second option is, of course, to buy something off the shelf. So to buy a water chiller that is already suited or fit for purpose for a CO2 laser. This effectively takes care of the water solution, it takes care of the filtration, it takes care of all of the things that you would have to incorporate or think about if you were to try and build your own. And of course, Monport do sell a large number of water cooling solutions for CO2 lasers. Whichever path you end up choosing, it's important to factor this into your budget. Cooling is not optional, it's a mandatory requirement to get these lasers working correctly. And you need to make sure that you're including those costs when you're considering a CO2 laser. Now, the final thing I want to mention in this video that I've learnt while setting up the Monport laser is the software. If you've spent any time in the laser world, you've probably come across or used Lightburn. Lightburn is basically the industry standard software when it comes to designing, layout, and controlling laser engravers and cutters. I've used it extensively with all my previous lasers, so everything from templating to engraving to the dust collection system here in the shop, so all of the flanges, a lot of the jigs that I've made have all used or implemented lasers, so they were done in Lightburn. Basically, anything that I've ever done on the laser that you've seen in a video, it's almost certainly that I've used Lightburn to create those. And if you're a heavy Lightburn user and you've been using diode lasers up until this point, then it's likely that you've been using a version of Lightburn called the core version. So the core version of Lightburn basically supports most of the common diode lasers or any lasers that basically use G-code to send instructions to the machine. But CO2 lasers, including the Monport, run on completely different controllers. And to be able to use those types of lasers with Lightburn, then you will need to make sure that the version of Lightburn you have is the Pro version. And that's because the Pro version is the only one that supports specific controllers that are often used in CO2 lasers. So the point being is that if you've been a core user like I have up until this point, and you move to a CO2 type laser like the Monport, then take into consideration that the likelihood is you'll need to upgrade your version of Lightburn to the Pro version, which again is another added cost beyond just the laser itself. For me, upgrading from the core version to the Pro version cost about 150 Australian dollars. So you need to take these things into consideration when you're contemplating your CO2 setup. So that basically brings us to the end of what I'm calling part one. Now, of course, you might have noticed that we didn't delve too deeply into the Monport 65 watt Pro here, and that was pretty much deliberate. I wanted this video to be about an initial experience, specifically targeted at those kind of people who are just like me, well adversed in the world of diode lasers, but are maybe considering branching out into the world of CO2. So if you have a diode laser and you're considering moving into the world of CO2, then hopefully this might give you some insights into some of the things that you should consider when you're making that shift. In part two, we'll go hands-on with the laser and we'll do a bit of a more technical deep dive into the Monport Reno 65 watt and find out some of the features and functionality. But specifically, I also want to start a project, or at least revisit a project that I've been wanting to do for nearly a year. I've been working on a sort of version 7 for a couple of months now, and I'm itching to try some prototyping to see, is it an improvement over the old design? So before I end this video, there are two very important things that I need to do. The first one being if my dad was watching this right now, he'd be hating this. Don't take the plastic off. Protection. Best you look away now, Dad. And of course, we need to at least break the laser in for a first job. And what better way to do that than by welcoming the newest channel members with their own membership coasters. So a special thank you to Greg, Ray, Jesus, Blair, and Endelbow Woodwork. Your support is greatly appreciated, and welcome to the Barber's Paddock. This is likely my last video for 2025, so I want to say another special thank you to everyone who's watched, enjoyed, and supported me through this year, and I'll see you in 2026.